Welcome, Harry, to Diagon Alley.
Now, I think I speak for everyone in saying that we all felt this moment when stepping past the moving bricks into Diagon Alley, looking ahead at all the unique storefronts, which beckon you to enter and discover all of their secrets. Despite being open for nearly a decade, Diagon Alley has remained Universal's crowning jewel of themed lands, hence the title. But I'd even go so far as to say it is one of the most detailed, interesting, and immersive lands built in any theme park around the world. Now, I know it's not a bold claim or hot take to say this. Many do agree with me, as it is the most popular land in the entire Universal Studios Florida theme park. But I wanted to ask why? What makes this land work? Why does it hold such a special place in the hearts of many? And how did it become Universal's most highly themed experience and the single must-do when visiting Universal Studios Florida? I think it has a lot more to do with what you don't see, what isn't present on the surface, and what's found if you take time to immerse yourself in the world and the story that the land creates, through its visuals, sound, and tactile interactivity that makes Diagon Alley unlike anything else ever created. So I wanted this video to be dedicated to the magic that is Universal's Diagon Alley, including how it came to be, and how it will continue to work even into the coming decades. Let's take a stroll on those cobblestone streets and talk about how Universal created their most impressive land with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Diagon Alley.
Ah, this is more like it. Welcome to Diagon Alley.
This is Warner Brothers Movie World, a theme park on the Gold Coast in Australia that contained the first presence of the Harry Potter franchise in a theme park. The Harry Potter Movie Magic Experience opened a few months after the release of the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone film in 2001, and would allow guests to travel through the famous brick walls and into Diagon Alley on a guided tour, learning information about the different storefronts and being walked through Ollivander's wand shop. While this seems rather simple by today's standard and only lasted until 2003, it showcased the demand for Harry Potter attractions in other theme parks. This makes sense, as the Wizarding World was a place that many seek to visit when reading the books and now watching the films. During the mid-2000s, Disney was approached to translate the Wizarding World into theme park form, and when their plans continued to be too lackluster for the author of the series, attention shifted to their biggest theme park competitor, Universal, who won over the author with their attention to detail when handling the Harry Potter property. In 2007, Universal announced that they would be building a land themed around Hogwarts and the neighboring village of Hogsmeade within their Islands of Adventure theme park, replacing the Merlinwood section of the Lost Continent land. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter Hogsmeade opened in June of 2010 with resounding success, being praised for its incredible theming within its design, products, and attractions, and easily becoming Islands of Adventure's most popular area. With park attendance up due to Hogsmeade, plans were beginning to be put in place to expand the Wizarding World. However, they would be moving outside of Islands of Adventure and into Universal Studios Florida. In January of 2012, Amity Island, the area of the park that contained the opening day Jaws attraction, closed to make way for a new expansion to the Wizarding World themed to Diagon Alley and the Hogwarts Express. Universal quickly began construction once Jaws closed, and they brought in many of those who worked on the Harry Potter films, including set designers, art directors, and production designers, and even some of the original actors to reprise their roles within the different experiences inside the land. In addition to Diagon Alley, construction also began on the Hogwarts Express, a highly themed connector between both Wizarding World lands and both theme parks as a whole. A little over 2 years after construction began, Diagon Alley and the Hogwarts Express were finished and opened to the general public in July 2014. Diagon Alley, while not as popular as Hogsmeade on opening day, was a very welcome addition and was of course a hit with fans and tourists alike. I think before we even go into the land itself, the London theming surrounding the land contains a lot of interesting details even in its simplicity. Like in the film, Diagon Alley is not out in the open and is hidden within London, so when creating the land, Universal chose to reflect that and add in some fun references within a landscape that blends in with the surrounding area. Within Universal Studios Florida, Diagon Alley rests on the waterfront next to the San Francisco area of the park, and the presentation of these aged facades representing real places in London, such as Wyndham's Theatre, Leicester Square Station, and King's Cross Station, reflects the realism found within the San Francisco area, and creates a pleasant and visually consistent sightline in most areas of the park. The attention to detail when capturing these real places is impeccable, and if you take a deeper look into these storefronts and windows, you may uncover some hidden references to the defunct Jaws attraction, as well as to the Harry Potter series. However, here you will also find some not so subtle references to the Wizarding World, including a full-size recreation of Grimmauld Place, complete with a creature animatronic that peeks out of the window if you knock at the right time, and the very eye-catching park night bus, with a conductor and shrunken head greeting guests as they walk past. However, despite its role as a photo op, the night bus feels less like a photo op and more like a life-size prop on display, ripped straight from the film. Everything from the weathering and the paint jobs to the props inside of the bus, which you can actually go inside to see, all feel authentic, and the detail on even this accessory to the main attraction still feels very meticulous. Unfortunately, you cannot ride in the bus, but if you travel only a few feet across the road, you'll wind up at King's Cross Station, home to the Hogwarts Express. Here you can actually visit Platform 9 3/4 and board a full-scale replica of the one-of-a-kind Scarlet steam engine, which acts not only as transport to Islands of Adventure, but as a full experience featuring screens and projection effects to truly simulate the feeling of traveling to Hogsmeade aboard a real train. As it was under development, you could see that a lot of time went into not only how the train looked, but also how it felt when riding. The team took a lot of inspiration from riding around steam trains in England and Scotland to translate the experience to the park, and that real-world experience adds to the immersion found within the attraction. I think the Hogwarts Express is a genius idea in how it solves a real issue without breaking the theming, and at the same time making an experience out of something that seems as mundane as traveling between parks. The walk from Universal Studios Florida to Islands of Adventure takes about 5 to 10 minutes, but because of the unique experience found within King's Cross Station, people will wait much longer. Plus, the attraction itself requires a 2-park ticket to board, which was very beneficial for Universal's ticket sales at the time, and was another perk of the experience on their end. The Hogwarts Express is definitely an integral part of the Wizarding World experience, and its role as a bridge between the two lands reinforces an important point when talking about Diagon Alley particularly, which is that despite it being a part of the Wizarding World, it contains a completely different identity than Hogsmeade and has a completely different appeal and mood that accompanies it. I'll touch more on that later, but I thought it was important to point that out now so we can keep that in mind as we explore Diagon Alley. Diagon Alley has 2 possible entrances, which is smart for crowd control, but the main entrance is, as you know, through the moving brick wall. This entrance, while not designed by Universal, is super effective for a theme park due to its ability to create a distinction between the land and everything else around it, and allowing the guests to see its most attractive elements up front, enticing them to come and look for more. By design, there is a specific focal point at the end of the walkway that is both eye-catching and thematically appropriate, acting as the indicator for something special and unique. A 60-foot Ukrainian Ironbilly statue sits perched above Gringotts Bank, which is a setting for the only ride found within the land, Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts. There are many different reasons why this was another stroke of genius on Universal's part, but the dynamic look paired with its unpredictable interactivity, breathing fire towards the guests walking on the streets, contribute to it being a perfect centerpiece for Diagon Alley. Visually speaking, there is a sense of consistency in the realism of these shops. They are painted with a very similar palette focusing on muted grays, blues, and earth tones, with a few exceptions, and they all mostly have that brick exterior, which also adds to that consistency. There's a lot of height in Diagon Alley as the buildings extend upward. The scale of these shops plays a large role in blocking out the outside world, and keeps the immersion intact. The area for Diagon Alley is also large enough to contain a lot of distinct locations from the Wizarding World, but not too large as to feel like everything's disconnected from one another. Also, a main difference you will note here versus Hogsmeade is the amount of room they have now for walking space and store space. The stores, while still relatively small, are larger than the ones in Hogsmeade, and there's a lot more ground dedicated to common area. Now, if I were to talk about every shop and location within the land with this kind of detail, this video will be way too long and tedious. However, I wanted to talk about some of my favorites, and how they represent the shops as a whole in blending familiarity with something new and unique, which is the greatest strength of this land. Starting off with the most colorful shop in the whole land, and the other centerpiece of Diagon Alley, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, this shop feels like it is ripped straight from the film. The facade contains many kinetic elements such as animatronic window displays and painted advertisements of the product on the back of the building, to add to an already recognizable storefront, and perfectly translates this store's exterior to real life. Going inside, we see that same level of detail and kinetic energy with the various props on display, even outside of the ones found in the main retail sections. Looking up, you can find different fictional products on display on the 2nd and 3rd floors, complete with a screened firework display on the ceiling. They completely nailed the tone with this, not only with the design elements, but also with the products themselves, continuing the colorful aesthetics onto the packaging and design of the candies and toys they sell in the store. Now, this shop, along with a handful of others, uses the films as a blueprint for its design, and finds room to include those references as a way to harp on nostalgia. But what about the ones that haven't been found in any of the films that have no visual reference? Despite not having any pre-existing visuals to back them, there is still an impeccable level of detail when looking into these shops, and each design choice seems thought through, with everything feeling as if it could fit into the world of Harry Potter. Now, I am aware that a lot of these shops are found and described with great detail within the novels. However, the ability to translate into real life and seamlessly fit them with an already crowded space, as well as creating them in a way that allows them to stand out from one another, is very impressive. Even a store such as Globus Mundi, which is a completely original store and the newest to open within the land, contains a level of whimsy that fits in while adding something new in a relatively small retail space. Now, while Diagon Alley is meant to transport you to a place of familiarity, I think it works by having some creative liberties taken with some of its locations. In the films, it's not very fleshed out, only featuring a handful of locations in detail and brushing over pretty much everything else. However, in the original source material, Diagon Alley is a bustling street, featured as an important setting in many of the novels. And I think the land captures the best of both worlds. There's been much debate when incorporating IP into lands within theme parks, and whether they should stay strictly with the source material down to the most minute detail, or create something completely new, yet following the same spirit of the story. And Diagon Alley manages to fall in both categories while still pulling off a story that is just as magical as the original novels and films. Now, I know I've talked a lot about visuals and design elements, but Diagon Alley is a multi-sensory experience. Sound-wise, there are always selections from the Harry Potter soundtracks playing, which are beautiful within themselves and honestly deserve a whole video. But there's a slight difference in song choice here versus in Hogsmeade. In Hogsmeade, more traditional themes are played, bringing a sense of triumph and nostalgia that accompanies the mood of the land. However, here the music can be described as more ambient, still featuring those classic themes but blending more into the background and letting the other sounds play a prominent role as well. The rumbling of the Hogwarts Express above you, the various muttering and babbling of voices within the storefronts, the clicking and typing found outside the Daily Prophet, and the occasional murmur of the menacing dragon commands your attention as they're paired against the majestic score, creating a soundscape that is unlike any that I've ever seen in another theme park. As all the sounds mix together, the land takes on a role of a real city, and it is one of the few occasions where the crowd adds to the land's density and immersion when it comes to the sounds. I know many probably don't recognize these details, but I think it provides a very unique experience that I can't truly describe, so I think it was definitely worth noting. However, even more than the sounds and visual elements, the haptic or kinesthetic elements found within the land add to its uniqueness and really does a lot of the work in fleshing out the detail. Sure, sounds and visuals have been used in pushing a certain mood throughout theme parks since the opening of Disneyland in 1955, but never has a land been more interactive to guests in this way. A lot of the success in this department can be attributed to the promotion of interactive wands, and while they were available in Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley contained a higher quantity of interesting wand spots, solidifying their success within the wizarding world. Simply, with an interactive wand which can be purchased inside of Ollivander's or the Gregorovitch wand shop, guests would not only get a fun replica of their favorite character's magic wand, but throughout the land, different markers would indicate spots where they can perform spells and interact with the environment around them. With these wand spots, storefronts become showcases for little stories that boost the lore within the wizarding world. And while some of the wand spots are pretty easy to find, some require a little more time looking, and with a little checklist that comes with your wand, you can look at the land like a scavenger hunt, taking time out to look around and admire hidden Easter eggs and fun ideas that Universal snuck into this already very ambitious land. Now, these wand spots are completely optional, and don't exclude you from experiencing everything the land has to offer. A lot of these spells are performed in common areas, so even if you're not performing them yourself, you will likely see someone else do it, showcasing the bits of hidden magic. However, if you are looking for that extra step in adding to your immersion within the land, I do suggest picking up a wand, as it feels really cool and magical to be the one performing spells, and is one of the few theme park investments that feels like it's truly worth your money with its interactivity. On top of wands, you can also trade your cash or muggle money for Gringotts banknotes, which adds another level of interactivity. These banknotes function the same as Universal gift cards, by the way. While this program isn't super well known and is more catered to the superfans, I think it is a little thing worth noting when it comes to how immersive and interactive Diagon Alley can be. So we've seen so far that Diagon Alley contains a new level of immersion when it comes to the environments and various shops, but what about the single ride within the land itself? Does this attraction match the same level of detail that the rest of the land does? Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts is a very interesting ride, as I don't know if there's another ride currently at Universal Orlando quite like it. It is a roller coaster simulator hybrid that features one of the most impressive queues I've ever seen. You walk through the halls of Gringotts Bank, which is meticulously recreated from how it appears in the films, complete with goblins working as you walk past. And after passing offices that occasionally feature projections of a disguised golden trio, you take the elevator downstairs where you load into your vehicle, surrounded by massive stalactites in the very, very bottom of the Gringotts Bank. While Gringotts is not necessarily the most fascinating place to me within the Wizarding world, getting to see it at this scale and being able to truly experience every floor of the bank definitely increased my appreciation for this location. As for the ride itself, the story is loosely based on the Deathly Hallows book and film, specifically the sequence where Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Griphook attempt to break into Gringotts to find a Horcrux. However, this version was given some key differences, such as the addition of Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange as antagonists, and Bill Weasley as really the ride's protagonist and your guide through the vaults. The story is executed well, with it moving at a decent pace. The ride also does a good job in blending the screens with physical sets, and those sets really aid the ride in making you truly feel there. I particularly enjoy this moment as the screen doesn't even really feel like it's there, and the scale of it feels truly believable. As far as the screen portions go, I think they work fine. The movements with the vehicles remain very smooth, and the effects that go with the spells are fun and work with the 3D. Compared to other attractions within the park, the 3D works well. It is nowhere near perfect and not even close to being some of the best 3D in the entire resort, but it does add to the ride, making it a fun 3D Harry Potter adventure. All the actors who return for the roles do a great job here, particularly Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort and Helen Bonham Carter as Bellatrix. As far as thrills go, this is probably your safest bet when it comes to the main Harry Potter rides, as this one is the least thrilling out of the bunch. It features one drop at the start of the ride, which is comparable to the drop found in Pirates of the Caribbean for those Disney fans, and this drop works for the story context while also solving the logistical problem of space. Because the rest of Diagon Alley takes up so much room, Escape from Gringotts isn't the largest ride in the world, and that I feel is the main reason why this ride doesn't have the same kind of thrill as Forbidden Journey or Hagrid's. The possibilities were just limited by the space at the time. However, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. Other than the drop at the beginning and a really fun spinning lift hill in the dark near the end of the ride functions like Transformers or Spider-Man and as an adventure, spinning the ride vehicles to add thrill when transitioning into different scenes. Because of the lack of real thrills compared to the other two, I think this ride is pretty accessible. And because of this accessibility, I think it makes Gringotts a favorite amongst those that may not be suited for Forbidden Journey or Hagrid's. And I think it's a perfect entry-level coaster ride for those who want to experience a fun time in the Wizarding world, but are nervous or have no clue what the others have in store. Overall, this is a fun attraction experience, but doesn't measure up with the rest of the land. For me, yes. The detail found within the queue, including these amazing animatronics, works to completely separate you from the outside world. And the ride itself, while not my favorite Wizarding World ride, works to make a nice additional experience that further ties in the story found within the books, while also adding new elements which I mentioned earlier. Escape from Gringotts is a good ride, and does add to the land, but in my opinion doesn't dominate the land like the other rides do in Hogsmeade, and it doesn't need to with everything else already present in Diagon Alley. I guess a general theme encompassing everything within Diagon Alley is that with this land, Universal is using the elements to really show rather than tell, and that's one of the main reasons why it is so special and hasn't really worn off, especially this long after opening. Guests likely come into Diagon Alley with a baseline familiarity with the area from the series, however rather than throwing lore and references at you right off the chute, they present them in a way that promotes exploration. The want spots are a perfect example of this, allowing guests to uncover them and other Easter eggs at their own pace, and forge their own path on how they will navigate the land. Areas such as Nocturne Alley, which is my favorite area within the land, is only really accessible if you know where to look or stumble upon it. It doesn't sacrifice the theming for its accessibility. With this model, Universal can really appeal to two different demographics. Those who know everything Harry Potter and will take time to seek out the specific references and Easter eggs, immersing themselves in everything Diagon Alley has to offer, but also the general guest, who may not know everything about Harry Potter and the Wizarding world, but will be intrigued due to the quality of the experience and want to explore the land to find all these hidden Easter eggs and secrets. I think that is what makes Diagon Alley so special, as it bridges the gap between those within a fandom versus those outside of the fandom. People within the fandom see it as somewhat of a sacred place, somewhere they dream about going for a very long time, and can fulfill those dreams once they visit. Harry Potter fans are very devoted to the series, and it's also worth noting that in previous years, Universal has recognized this and marketed a special celebration within the Wizarding world for hardcore fans, showcasing an understanding and acknowledgement of not only those who come because it's a tourist destination, but also those who come because the Wizarding world is their safe space, so to speak. While expansions such as Star Wars Galaxy's Edge were controversial with the people inside of the fandom due to their creative choices, Diagon Alley is nearly loved by everyone, and that accessibility and openness makes it a very unique location within theme parks. Between a nice blend of nostalgia and creative risks, extremely intricate detail, a lot of unique experiences, and a sense of interactivity not really found anywhere else outside of the Wizarding World, Diagon Alley works well and will continue to be an important and popular expansion that I think will age like fine wine. To this day, across all of the Universal parks, I still believe Diagon Alley is the gold standard when it comes to immersion, creating a world that will not only take time to uncover every detail, but will make you want to take that time to uncover all of its hidden magic. And at the risk of sounding more redundant than I likely have already been, I think I'm going to end it right here. What do you all think? Do you agree with me in saying that Diagon Alley is Universal at their best? Do you wish Amity Island was back? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments. And a massive thanks to those who have made it this far in the video. I know this is a long one, and I haven't really made a video like this before, so if you did enjoy it, leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. I really love and appreciate all the support that you guys bring to the channel with any real kind of engagement that you leave on the video, so thank you. I'm Aiden, this is Dreamport Productions, and as always,
mischief managed.